New and awesome in 3D printing for gaming. I'm one of your hosts, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined by
Kristen Sowards, also known as Seventh Mastery.
Just a straight up warning. This is a slightly drama filled episode. I don't like drama, but it applies directly with some stuff we've talked about in the show. So we
and
kind of
stuff
felt
we backed.
So the Kickstarter disasters is coming up as the topic. But before we get into the doom, before we get into the gloom, before we get into the cautionary tales and the advice to save our monies, what are we working on the cool stuff? What are we making, Chris? What are we doing awesome?
I am printing werewolves.
Werewolves?
I believe they're technically called warglings. Technically, they are from Frecky over at Fleshcraft, and they are somewhat Kickstarter adjacent. But in the interest of, being fair, you ask me about what that is if you want.
Yes, please be fair and disclose any potential biases you have in this space.
Yes, I am currently running a Kickstarter. That's what I'm being kind of elusive about. Yes, Duality Complex, werewolves. Yes, they're wargling werewolves. And Frecky was kind enough to support my effort. It's the Clockmasters Codex. It's basically a whole bunch of collections of gaming advice from TikTok people, because there was that brief moment where we were kind of scared that app was going away. And I freaked out. David asks if it is a 3D Kickstarter. It has 3D files given to me by Fleshcraft Studios and by Dragon Trappers Lodge. It has big steampunk dragon, but that's part of the resource pack. That just a whole bunch of it's like a buffet of stuff, right? So it's a whole bunch of different topics, everything from RPG as an art form to running games for friends with disabilities to designing pantheons. It's just everywhere, right? But I got these cool werewolves for it. And so, the werewolves are what I'm painting up and working on right now because I want to show them off. So, yeah.
Well, that sounds cool. Do you have the werewolves with you?
I don't. They are upstairs. The second batch is curing right now.
Ooh.
They are so neat. But yeah, can't. So here's a cool thing. When it fulfills, when we fund, the STLs will go out immediately. So you will have werewolves in time to print them and paint them for Halloween.
Yes,
which I think is rad. So
yes. And I like werewolves. We know this. I painted up some really cool werewolves from Cast and Play. And there's a lot of really fun werewolves out there in the 3D printing space.
It's true.
It's a popular trope.
And Frecky did really, really dynamic posing work on these little guys.
Yeah. For me, my 3D printing journey this last couple of weeks, really, it's been a while since I've got to talk about projects. Well, besides the fact that work-related 3D printing has been going on, I finally had time to get the Elegoo Saturn 3 Ultra out of its box and going.
Oh,
yes.
So jealous.
And I am so happy with this machine. So setting it up was super easy, just like any other 3D printer that's a resin printer. Using the 4 little screws was very satisfying to make sure that, like, I know that's level and that ain't ever getting unlevel. Though I have had to re-level it 3 times, even though it's just a paranoia sake because we had some early print failures. I've been testing out different types of resins with different types of settings, so failures were expected. So, like, that's not the problem. But just to diagnose, did some.
So you were just checking your level to do due diligence to make sure that wasn't the problem.
Right.
So, did it actually require any leveling?
No, absolutely not.
So you just checked it and it was fine, and you just kept going. Okay.
Absolutely.
So when you say you're leveling, you just checked it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just checked it.
I mean, good on you. That's when I diagnosed that was a problem with mine, and I'm almost positive it's because the side screw on my Saturn has stripped, which means I just every print it's going to get a little wonky, and I have to balance it. But that's fine.
So my experience working with the new Saturn. Well, first, built-in filters are awesome. And I don't have to do the swapping the USB charged ones like I had to with my original
isn't that
setting.
big a pain, but yes, and
It's
that is
really easy
probably
to forget to charge one.
Oh,
And then
sure.
just not have a filter for a
Oh,
print.
I've never done that.
And I don't have to worry about that because it's
Today.
plugged straight in.
Right.
Also, I didn't know how much I appreciated this feature. When it's done printing, the fans turn off and it doesn't make noise anymore.
That's amazing.
I know.
So it stays on, but all the stuff powers down. Because
Yeah,
I'll tell you, every time I go in there and realize I left it on, like while
Mhm.
like I was working on something else, or like forgot it during a whole game of D&D or whatever,
Mhm.
I'm like, did I just burn out my motor? Was this the time that I left it on too long?
I doubt it, considering how long I've left mine on. It basically has not gone off since purchase.
Oh wow. Yowzers. Yeah, no, I've never left mine on. I mean, like, I think there was one time where I went away for like a weekend trip and came back and realized it was still on, but that was it.
It's also weird because it's got Wi-Fi that works.
Like works? You said you didn't like that feature. I'm surprised you even tried it.
Feature. I don't like that feature because it almost never works.
But it works.
This handles it differently. What it does is the Saturn has like a built-in little bit of onboard memory. So instead of me sending print commands to it over Wi-Fi, I just transfer the file to the memory so that I can go. It's just taking the place of the stick.
That's still so cool.
Yeah. And first, like all metal, it's surprisingly bigger than the Saturn or the Saturn II. Like it's a little bit taller, a little bit broader. It takes up more room on my little print desk. And the ACF film freaks me out a little bit because you know what I don't hear? I don't hear pop, pop, pop.
You don't hear the pop. Yeah, actually.
It releases so smoothly.
I told you
I don't hear the pop.
I replaced my last FEP with newer generation. I don't think it was that, but it was even just the FEP2.
The NFEP.
Yeah, and I have to go and like, did that start? Like I have to go check because I'm used to that old shwank and kind of like snap noise. Yeah.
So I switched to NFEP and it did get quieter. With this ACF, I don't hear the pop. And I had to freak out a couple of times. Like, are you even printing? Are you even doing it? Stop, pause. Nope, there you are. There are my little rat boys. To be completely fair, nothing that I printed is going to make its way to the paint table because these were all print tests to determine. I'm in the search for the perfect resin right now.
You threw it at the ground, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I threw it at the ground. I picked it up and purposely snapped arms off little rat boys and pushed them to their limits until they snapped and broke and shattered. And all sorts of different fun little rats are now in the trash because they did their due diligence.
That's so sad. There are gamers in rural communities who needed those rats.
I hope so. I hope they can enjoy lots of free rats.
Actually, I see people coming in from Twitch. That's cool. The
Hello.
Butler and Duality is here, and that's really neat. We've never had
awesome. Welcome to the show. Other cool things. The tempered glass screen is nice, so I don't have to be super paranoid about screen protectors.
But does it still have one? Or just don't care?
I don't have one on it right now because I need one sized for it. So there's one on order and it will be put on it when it comes in. I would have done that in advance, but I technically don't need one on this printer. So I'm being a little bit cavalier.
Okay, I have to point out Stream Daddy Gaming just popped in, and that has been an effort to see me on Twitch for like months. And yes, he said, "OMG, he's here." Yes, this is it's true. It really happened. There you go, buddy. Sorry.
The fun part is it's printing in half the time that my Saturn 1 printed.
Wow.
Using just the normal settings. I don't even have this thing vrooming right now. I dread to see what happens when I put it over to vroom settings or to even like throw it onto like there are some like hyper speed Saturn 3 Ultra settings you can go to that like is even faster than that like prints a whole freaking miniature in an hour. But what would have been a 6-hour print of a rat boy holding a flag in the air, so you know how long those freaking
like the
spear, like
standard bearers.
the giant freaking standard bearer rat boy. It was like it's a 6-hour print normally on room settings on a Saturn. 3 hours 20 minutes.
Wow.
On just slow mosey on the Saturn 3 Ultra.
How fast do you think you'll be on Zoom?
I think I can cut another hour off that easy. And if I don't know that I want to go to complete ridiculous mode at like 25 millimeters an hour.
Huh. I mean, that I would still try it because, you know, me. Like, how many times I've had to bust out a whole tray, like, I don't know, of Teletubbies. Did I tell you that? I printed off the Teletubbies and I used them.
The creepy ones from DTL?
Yes, the DTL Teletubbies.
Oh, no.
I totally didn't even mention this to you. Yeah. My player Jude, who is awesome, was like, he saw I did a TikTok showing the files off. And I was like, oh my gosh, these exist. They're for free. You can get them on things. You can just go grab them. And so he's like, you have to use it. You have to use this. And I'm like, okay. So I set up a very unlikely scenario to get them into the nightmare dimension. And then I had the Teletubbies show up and attack them. But first off, those things are amazing, but they're also like really big. They're like kaiju size. They're like huge. Or actually gargantuan. If you're talking minis. But I downsized mine to large because they're so big. But they felt better at large for me, and they were still, the detail was so good on the gargantuan version that they looked great at large size. So like fantastic stuff. But yeah, so I had those too. I didn't even mention that in my projects. Jeez. But yeah, I printed them and painted them in less than 8 hours.
I love this hobby that's possible.
Right?
I haven't even told you the best part about this printer yet, my dude.
Okay, go. What is it?
The 12K. I've never seen rats this glorious before. I thought they looked really good. Do
you have one of them that you didn't demolish, like some sort of horrible kaiju monster yourself?
No.
They're all destroyed. You destroyed every single citizen of Ratopolis.
I was thorough with my testing.
We will try you for crimes against Ratmanity.
But they're so gloriously crisp. Like the little ribbons on their shirts have like sharp edges and no layer lines and no like that weird that weird cartography crap. That topology stuff is gone, and there's no weird cross-hatching texture. It's just smooth, perfect rat boy.
Well, apparently anybody who's looking for Christmas, I'm just saying.
You've gone incredibly quiet, Kristen.
Oh, I did that because I was shamefully not wanting to beg somebody to buy me one for Christmas.
Yeah. Remember, we're an audio audience, so you need to be heard.
Well, that was deliberately shamefully quiet. I wanted people to lean in because sometimes you want people to listen. So you talk really quiet.
Oh, yeah. So overall, very, very happy with Saturn 3 Ultra. Wonderful purchase. If you get it on the next sale, that would be a great purchase for anybody. I was waiting for a generational leap, which is why I went with this one, because the Saturn, and then the Saturn S, and then the Saturn 2, and then the Saturn 4K, and all of the Anycubics and the other manufacturers' versions of these printers have all been very, very small little upgrades. Like going to mono screen was worth it. That was a big upgrade. And then like resolution is getting better and all that jazz was getting better. This feels like the first like actual generational leap forward again since the second generation printers.
So here's a question for you. Are you finding that just standard resin still works okay? Like if me, I buy my Sunlu in bulk.
I do not believe in 8K resin. I do not believe in 12K resins. I do believe that there are probably resins that are sharper and more detailed, but that usually comes at the cost of being brittle.
Sure. So what you're saying is you'd still get some pretty dang look good.
We are talking about microscopic reactions. You can look closely at a 12K screen just by leaning in and see the pixels. you can't look closely and see the atoms. So
Right.
the idea that these resins are keyed to some 8K or 12K resolution anything is just preposterous. And so I do not believe that anybody should spend extra money buying high res resins. And I have yet to see anybody run legitimate testing on these using a high res printer with a variety of resins and seeing if the results. The closest I've ever seen was an incredibly flawed video that I won't name the creator, so I won't shame the creator, where they were like, let's test the resins. And they tested it by taking a high-res resin on a high-res printer and a low-res resin on a low-res printer.
Yeah.
And you know what it looked like? Like a low-res resin printer printed something and a high-res printer printed something.
Right.
That is
So,
not how you do
open
scientific
invitation
testing
to
by
somebody who
any
wants to
form.
do a good deep dive on it. We would love to see it. So
Yeah.
if you are up to that challenge, please do.
If you are a resin manufacturer and just want to send me a bunch of different samples of resin so I can run this test myself,
Or me,
or Chris, you don't have a 12K printer yet.
Well, they could send me one of those too.
Okay, sure. The key to this is you need to have a high-res printer to run this test successfully.
No,
but basically it's a 24 by 19 micron printer. So like we said, like this is the sub manufacturing resolution. There's some really great Fallhammer video out there showing this off. Great videos on this printer over on Fallhammer's channel. And it is like the resins are getting the printer is getting such a good print resolution, especially if you go down to the lower layer heights as well, that it starts to get a glossy finish instead of
I was talking about that.
Yeah. And we have a
Stream Daddy wants you to know how much it cost. Yeah.
I think this was, I got it for 400 and I think it retails for $5, but they were running a launch sale for $100 off.
It tells me in a year or two it'll be even cheaper.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and Anycubic's got their own versions of this 12K printer, though it's got some issues right now, so maybe not avoid the Anycubic one.
I've been trying not to say anything bad about Anycubic for a whole episode, but I don't think we made it.
Like, I don't want to bash Anycubic themselves. I'm just saying that their current printer has some weird issues with their ACF film.
I really like my Anycubic FDM. There, I said something nice about Anycubic.
You got the Cobra?
No, I have Mega X.
Okay, that's a good printer.
Yeah. The only problem I've ever had with it is when I tried to do 7 temples at the same time because it's such a massive build volume. And there was a little issue because it was moving so much.
Oh, that's a lot of mass to sling.
Yeah. And it's just on a little like end table. So like it caused some issues with that print. And I got 2 of the temples curled and failed.
Oh, no.
But the other 4 still finished, which despite having 2 failures on the same plate, they were great.
With FDM printers, I don't like to stack the build plates because
I came from resin first, and you were your mentor, my master, and I learned to Jenga.
Yeah. In resin printer, you should absolutely stack the build plates and throw as many little cute rat boys and werewolves on that plate as you can, because the time constraint is height based, not volume based. But with FDM printers, you actually have, the time is how much goop can I squirt out this nozzle, and that is volume based. So you don't actually save much time by loading the print. All you're doing is saving yourself potential downtime between starting and stopping prints. But you run the risk of ruining multiple prints simultaneously during a failure.
Is your AC on?
It is off right now.
Oh, interesting. There is an odd hum.
Lovely.
Is it me?
Mark says some people lost sight of the fact that Kickstarter is an investment opportunity, not a store. Investments always involve risk.
That's true.
So no, it's not. Full respect to Mark. It's not an investment because there's not a return on investment. You are okay. It is a fancy pre-order. I do not get profit sharing back if a campaign is successful.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to think. There's a better. It's a Well, it's a Patreon.
Mhm.
It's a patron situation. You're trying to hope for things, and you're not guaranteed them.
Right.
But
Like there is some inherent risk in doing Kickstarters, but at the same time, it is neither charity nor is it gambling,
right, and there
and
is
nor is it an
accountability.
investment. It because I don't get money back. I am
That's
getting
fair.
potentially a good at maybe a good price.
Right.
And quite often on Kickstarter, you're actually getting it at the worst possible price to have got that good.
Sometimes, for
Mhm.
sure, yeah. I'm guessing that Mark means that there is an opportunity sometimes to get those value adds,
Right.
because like
Mhm.
I've had some STL things where you
Mhm.
can get like really big incentive packages
Mhm.
or things like that, and on that I can see why we would use the term investment.
Yeah.
But
I'm just being very careful with my words.
no, I
Right.
totally get it. We are not a financial podcast. Do not trust us for financial advice. We are enthusiastic weirdos,
Yeah.
but we love
And
you all.
I'm not a licensed accountant either. Um,
Mhm. Hire one
yeah.
of those if you do.
So I guess it
We
is
are not.
time we pivot to the topic then.
Yes, I know.
Kickstarting disasters has happened in our
Kickstarting
community
does.
lately. So basically,
Yeah.
within this week, two gigantic Kickstarters have come out with drama and potential failure, and boy, is that just fun and lovely. And hey, hey, Titan Troll, it's good to have you here. Um, it's not going to be all doom and gloom, but we're definitely going to hit the first one. And the reason we're bringing this up is because first, it is two creators that we have talked about and endorsed on the show before.
Yep. Both of them for sure.
So first is of course the Broken Anvil situation with their 3 Kickstarters, and
Who
then
I loved.
and then there's the which one? What's the name of this new one?
Uncharted
The Uncharted
Lands,
Lands
I believe.
Kickstarter from Danny from
Yep.
3D Printed Tabletop is also having some troubles. So let's get into the Danny one first, then,
Sure,
because this is the
sure.
easier one to tackle, because it's also the one that most directly uh, applies to our audience, because it is a straight 3D printing first product.
But it does have a physical
Yeah,
component, and that's kind of
yeah.
the catch here,
So
right?
so
For disclosure's sake, I am a backer of this Kickstarter,
I am not.
and so I have received all this information directly.
Mhm.
But it seems the principal thing that most of the STLs have been delivered,
Mhm.
and that there is a question of whether or not we will see the physical book or the PDF
Mhm.
at all,
So the pitch for
or any of those stretch
so the
goals.
pitch for this, like many of his previous campaigns, has always been a bunch of models that and an adventure to go with it that uses those models. That has been his past 3 Kickstarters before this one, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The other ones were all STL based,
Yes,
basically.
and
And this
PDF
is the first time
for
that,
the adventure.
yeah, yeah, yes,
Mhm.
yes, all digital.
Yep.
Is what I should say.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And what's different this
this
time?
is this time is we had a physical book, and having dealt with physical books, they are a whole different beast.
Mhm.
You have different costs. You have to deal with
Mhm.
shipping. You have to deal with formatting for press. You have to deal with finding a printer, and these things were all enormously complicated by the global pandemic.
Mhm. Yeah.
And to that situation, that is fair, that does complicate things. This was an enormously successful Kickstarter, so I'm still a little
Yeah.
confused. I will say that.
Over $300,000 were raised on this, which was his biggest Kickstarter yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And to give you a context, I have done a physical book Kickstarter
Mhm.
for just around a tenth of that, honestly. So, and I did not have nearly as many backers, so I'm not going to claim that I had the same scaling issues that
Mhm.
this had, but I have a very personal insight on it. And yes, there are completely bad complexities that can happen. There are uncontrolled things that can happen for sure. Um, I have been told in those backer updates that there are over 300 pages of unformatted, unlaid out text, but that there is the spine of the book. The PDF could exist, and that the PDF they have requested maybe that there's 2 people I think who are volunteering to help already, and that they've requested if anybody else wants to help to see this creation happen, that they think it might happen, but they have been very clear, since it will be volunteer only driven, that it might not, that there might be no PDF and there might be no book, and there never will be a book, which is kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. So, I mean, there is some, like, it's bad news all around. And
Right.
the fact that the PDF is being held up is a surprise to me, because like this is previously he's done this, so like there's no surprise. But physical production is a difficult thing to do, and
Amen.
it's something that it's a skill set to have and learn. And I do think that it is an easy thing to underestimate what all is involved and the costs that are involved and such in something like that.
Absolutely. Yes.
And,
like I tried some very creative things in mind to save money.
mm-hmm.
And those creative things, when you try them, sometimes aren't guaranteed. I had an in with a quality test on a shipping
Mm-hmm.
solution that the person, in a totally amazing coincidence, got promoted out of the position where they were in charge of that process.
Oh boy.
And so I had assurances that would have saved me a whole bunch of shipping costs on my project internationally, that I suddenly then acquired unexpectedly international shipping. And I will tell you, that's expensive stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, like, very recently, in a post-COVID world, the price of shipping and manufacturing overseas, which is something that the industry as a whole was relying on these very cheap rates and availability, boy, that doesn't exist anymore.
It does not.
The cost of shipping a container full of books is humongously more expensive. The cost of getting those books printed is humongously more expensive. The fact that things cost more now after COVID is not a surprise to anybody. Now, whether they should cost as much as all that jazz is neither here nor there, nor anything we can really say much on. But the fact that it costs more is true.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And there are different partners, right? Your partner could be one way, and it could that person, even like in the same port city or wherever, the costs can be distinctly and extremely different. I got wildly, like, over 20% fluctuation in my price quotes. And a lot of times there are people in the business world that will take advantage of people who don't know much. And so I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't know, honestly.
Yeah, I do not know what happened with this particular Kickstarter beyond what we've been told, but I do know some things that just some things that you just mentioned, that it's a good idea to get your production and stuff and quotes before the Kickstarter starts, because I have absolutely seen companies look at what you got from the Kickstarter and then price you accordingly instead of price you normally.
Yep, absolutely true. 100%.
But in this case, he has come out and said it relatively quickly.
Well, yeah. And he mentioned another very common problem that Kickstarters run into is these are incredibly stressful things. I will tell you right now, my blood pressure's up and all these other things. Every way your body can be challenged and every way your mind can be challenged, you are on high stress on a Kickstarter. And Danny did disclose that he had health issues. And that is not surprising to me, because this is one of the hardest things you can do as a human being, to put yourself out here like this. And it has consequences. It has consequences on your mind. It has consequences on your heart and the rest of your body. And it's hard. It's really, really hard. And it can make you very, very sick. I speak from personal experience. My first Kickstarter did a number on me, and I loved it, and I'm grateful I did it. But it had consequences, and I'm not surprised that happened to somebody else.
And I'm not here to make any excuses for Danny or the Kickstarter or the bad situation this is. I'm just saying I'm not surprised when I see Kickstarter failures. This is a pretty typical and understandable possible series of events. And also, it's not the worst possible disaster, considering a good amount of this Kickstarter has already made its way to backers. And we're talking about fulfillment of parts of a Kickstarter and not complete failure to fulfill any of it. There's been many Kickstarters where I've only gotten part of my potential
Absolutely.
rewards.
I'll tell you a funny one. Kickstarted a cat tree that was a little mini saguaro cactus. It's a little cute. And we got a length of green rope and a length of white rope, and that was it. Like, it hadn't been built. There was no wood. We just got the rope.
What?
And it wasn't even enough to wrap all. Like, it was enough to like do like one cat tree, half green and half white. But there was no. There was no boards.
$20 in Home Depot would have gotten me the same results.
Oh, better.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I backed as a gift this little teeny cube of micromagnets that were little cubes. It was a cube made of cubes of magnetic material, and it looked so neat. And they showed their prototype, and it looked great. Never saw it.
Wow.
Nothing.
If you are a creator listening to the show, we know many creators do listen to the show. You need to. Kickstarters can fail because they succeed. If you didn't plan how the Kickstarter will scale successfully, it can become incredibly dangerous. And this becomes exceptionally true when you start introducing physical rewards into things. And one of the reasons that the 3D printing space Kickstarters have had such a good reputation, haven't been such a is because they're almost all digital. We're all talking about like STL files and PDFs, and a lot of times the expectation has been that most of that stuff is ready to go before the Kickstarter even hit, and will hit your downloads immediately after, so that usually you're only waiting for stretch goals to get fulfilled, or like a couple of months at most to wait to get fulfilled and then get stretch goals. So you get your stuff very, very quickly, which is very opposite of my normal Kickstarter expectations, which is it is normal for anything physical to be late by a year or more. I'm looking at you, Kingdom Death Monster, and like just now, literally this month, finally fulfilling the last reward on their very first release.
Yeah. Well, you know, I still have faith, but Grimmer Space is still, we're still out there on that.
I saw Sean Astin in a Bible movie today, and that reminded me of Grimmer Space. Like,
I mean, to give you an idea, it was contemporary with mine. And mine has been fulfilled now for the 3-4 years.
Oh gosh, I helped on the promotion and organization on that. I feel bad.
Titan Troll has been very vulnerable here and said, first one did 3,000, didn't expect it, set up stretch goals every 1,000K. Wow. Yeah, that was a mistake. And you know what? I have lived your pain, sir.
Good on you for fulfilling it. Good on you. I also want to do a shout out for Titan Troll. If you have not checked out Titan Troll's miniatures or Kickstarters or Patreons or tribes or whatever, I don't know where all you're at, Titan Troll, but you do wonderful minis. It's very cool, low fantasy stuff, wonderful details, and the best faces in 3D printing right now. Absolutely.
If I said 30K, I meant 3K. I meant 30K, and I do have the Utah consonant crush, so I have made 30K sound more like 3K. But yes, that's a 30 stretch goals. Yes, that's crazy.
Oh my good Lord, man. Oh, yeah. So you do need to prep for how this is going to be, because like maybe you get your goal, maybe you get your twice your goal. What are you going to do when you get 100 times your goal? Like, first, congratulations, but did your reward scale? And with physical, that can become a problem, because like
it can suddenly.
I've seen multiple Kickstarters in the past go upside down and lose their creator money despite hitting $1 million pluses.
Oh yeah. Well, I can give you a fun one, right? Here's a good one. You get your shipment. You have money. Everything's good.
Right.
This might have happened. You get the books. They drive up to your house with the books that you're going to ship from your front living room. And they are like, where's your loading dock? And like, I don't have a loading dock. I expressly told the people in the shipping company, I don't have a loading dock, and you needed to be able to deliver this into my garage. And the guy said, no. Dropped 2, like more than a ton each pallets of books in the middle of my street. And then it started raining as he drove away.
Oh my goodness.
I had to move 2 tons. It was the middle of the day. There was nobody I could find to help me in time. I had to move 2 tons of books by myself. and I did it in 45 minutes. I nearly died.
I can only imagine.
But this is the sort of stuff that's happening to these creators, and especially when you have that physical element. I hurt myself during that, and that's suddenly, what is the price tag? What is the profit if you're hurting yourself and impacting your health?
Right.
Yeah.
And we go from bad news to worse news.
Mm-hmm.
The other major one that has become an issue this week is Broken Anvil. Broken Anvil is a company we've talked about a lot on this show. They used to do 3D printed minis. They did awesome 3D printed Kickstarters. They had a really awesome Broken Anvil monthly line of models that was amazing. We were super happy. We loved Broken Anvil stuff.
They were one of my first 3 annual subs. It was Epic, Broken Anvil, and One Page Rules.
And eventually they decided to leave the 3D printing space after starting a project called Rivenstone. They were going to make their own skirmish war game. And it sounds like it was going to be great. People that have played the game love the game. People that have looked at the models. I have seen the models of this myself in person at conventions.
Pause. This change in model was very abrupt.
Yes, it was very abrupt.
And I was very unhappy with the resolution of it. And I'm just going to disclose that fact. Right. The way it was handled, I was not. So just weigh my comments on this from here on out, that I was not happy with how their 3D STL Patreon changed.
But they moved on into physical production with Rivenstone. And they did a Kickstarter, Rivenstone Kickstarter, incredibly successful Kickstarter. Let me pull up the numbers on that one.
And given their success here, I of course literally went to this Kickstarter page. I even think I talked about it on the show, and then we went and looked for the STL pledge, and there wasn't one. Right, and I was just like,
it is they raised $233,000 for Rivenstone. For launching a board game, that's on the low side of things. So yeah, especially a war game. But hey, successful. Blew the butt.
I'd be very happy with that if I was a little company. I mean, I would be.
And you likely have heard of this game because for a very long time, every painter on YouTube, every podcaster involved in this was talking about Rivenstone. Chris from Broken Anvil even was on Trapped Under Plastic. Miniac, Dana Howe, all you name them, they were painting Rivenstone models in sponsored videos.
And the models were fantastic.
The models look great because Broken Anvil's models have always looked great. And they were one of the very first, look how awesome COcast. COcast opens up possibilities that did not exist before. And so they were going to be like one of the big COcast success stories. The industry is changing over thanks to this new manufacturing thing. Then a little bit later, and continuing what we looks at from the outside is just successful trajectory. They launched the Forged Kickstarter, which was, hey, we've got all these old 3D printable models. What if they was available physically for a stupid cheap price? We've seen this model work out before with other Kickstarters, like famously Reaper Bones.
Like, for sure.
Stupid cheap price for Reaper Bones models. Makes sense. That Kickstarter also funded at $243,000.
That's very consistent.
And then a little bit later, in September, the last update was September. A little bit later, they decided to do a paint range. This one surprised me. I didn't know that the world was calling out for another one. I kind of said this on the show when this came up. I didn't understand why they were doing the paint range. Sure. We've had a bunch of Kickstarter paint ranges be pretty successful lately. Duncan Rhodes, most famously of all. You had a Duncan Rhodes set, didn't you?
I did. Actually, someone gifted me that. They bought it for a Christmas present for me, which was very, very nice. But yeah, I did. Was really alarmed because the shipping from overseas, they were highly pressurized. So these little teeny bottles, if you were not careful, would squirt out about a third of their content.
Oh no. So it's at least better than what's happening with the Speed Paint 2.0s. where the little bead in the Speed 2.0s is just the perfect size that if you turn it completely vertical, will clog up the tip. And then if you do the bad, which anybody who's ever been taught painting by anybody else has you probably been taught, well, if your bottle is clogged, don't squeeze harder. You have to get the clog out, or else you're about to have a paint explosion.
Which I have done on a live stream before.
So with the Speed Paint 2.0s, let me grab one here. The little bottle, the little bead is actually, if you hold it completely vertical, it will clog the hole and keep you from being able to squeeze. And if you keep squeezing, it will explode. So you have to, the solution is to just tilt it at any angle besides straight vertical, and it will work perfectly fine. And if it does clog, don't squeeze harder. Just shake it once and don't do it completely vertical. Warning.
Or use your little skull-tipped pin and just pop it back down.
Well, yeah, but like they're so liquid, it's not an actual clog. It's just the bead in the way. And if you just tilt it this way, the bead's out of the way. It's literally a loose bead.
Oh, well, then that's not a problem. I mean, to me.
It's just a weird, unfortunate coincidence that has happened to many people that I've seen oopsie it the first time. And you learn your lesson real quick when you oopsie it the first time.
Friend borrowed my 2.0 and ended up with a lovely green table.
Oh, no. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. But why are we talking about Broken Anvil? Well, it turns out that whether or not they're going to be able to fulfill any of these Kickstarters is in question. What we do know about the situation, first, they haven't fulfilled any of them yet. Rivenstone's over a year late. Former employee has come out with an anonymous former employee has come out with a list of statements, some of which have been confirmed, accusing Broken Anvil of basically over hiring, getting a new office, and basically making their budget too big so that it was not sustainable. Reportedly having over $100,000 in monthly expenses. If you only raid 200,000, I don't know how that math works.
Yeah, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
And then they let most of the people go very recently, as Titan Troll is saying. So there's only 2 full-time employees now working for Broken Anvil. The Chris, the owner, and their partner. As well, and that's been confirmed by Chris. They were looking for a buyer to potentially get them out of here. That didn't work. The accusation is that the other Kickstarters were started to try to basically keep the money coming in to try to fulfill the previous ones, which is a trap I've seen people fall in before. It does not. Yep. I've never seen it end well.
No.
Never seen it end well. And at this point in time, the money's gone. The product's not out the door. There's been some release statements. They've deleted their socials. They've deleted their Discord. And the potential buyer has backed out of the acquisition. It seems incredibly unlikely from the outside that this is going to end happily for backers.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
Their Discourse Miniatures has a really good breakdown video going over it, and the King of Average has done a deep dive video on the topic that goes through all the research, all the official statements, all the unofficial statements, and all the updates. But at the end of the situation, it seems that the money's gone. They overspent. There is no more money. If I was a backer of any of these Kickstarters, I would look into what my options were to salvage what I can. Some of these are recent enough that maybe you can do charge blocks on your credit cards. Look into your options, people, because I don't see this as going anywhere. And it's hard to get money for refunds from a company that doesn't have the money to give you the refund.
Right. And ceases to exist, right? So. James said scam themselves. I guess that's kind of accurate-ish.
Who knows? I don't want to use. I'm using allegedlys and reportedlys, and I'm not using words
I
like
mean, these are
scam,
accusations.
because of doing journalistic responsibility here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But again, this is one of the situations where not talking about what may have happened specifically with this Kickstarter, because we do not know the specifics. We only have the public statements that have said as what we've basically said. But we have seen Kickstarters in the past that have had success. Use that success to try to overexpand and hope to have more success and grow infinitely. And that's just not how things work. And it's very easy to go upside down.
Yeah, having sat in that moment, you start to feel, manic and indestructible. And I could see some people who are a little less grounded, maybe making some really extreme calls. Like in my situation, so I'm just speaking for me, not anybody else. I got very excited and bought more art. And I bought a lot of art. And so I went over budget on art, and I ended up paying for that in my own pocket, but I did pay it. And because the way I operate my company, I pay my people first. So like, like if there's any money that comes to me from the Kickstarter, it goes to all the creatives first, and then I work with what's remaining, right? Like, and that's my budget and my plan. And I think a lot of people don't do that. They get really like excited and I know there's a lot of companies, and I'm not going to name names, that pay on publish, and like, to have
that practice is going out of style for good reason.
Oh yeah, it's awful. I have lived that. Where I had a 25,000 word module I wrote, and it was good. I'm really proud of it, but I didn't see a dime of that for almost a year.
Yeah. This is why I refuse pay on publish contracts. And most artists should. If you're an artist in any capacity, my advice is half up front, then rest on delivery. And that is industry standard in every other freaking industry but the game industry.
It's true. And I actually do working funds as soon as the Kickstarters fund. I do give 50% to my writers and artists, as long as I have an outline or a concept sketch. And then they do the work, and that's how it goes. And, if somebody gets excited and starts ahead of time, that's their choice. But I've never expected an artist or writer to work without money.
Oh, well, we have Titan Troll has a personal anecdote on this one. I worked on the model for the Slate Aspire board game. Well, first, awesome work. Those models were wonderful. I got excited. It was 2 years till I got paid. I was owed $5,000. Oh my God. Ouch.
Wow.
I'm so sorry. First,
I'm so sorry.
For two reasons, because that's a stupidly low amount of money for that work, especially for such a successful Kickstarter. I have that dang game.
Whoa. That's gut-wrenching.
Yeah. I'm so sorry, my dude. Sometimes the game industry is I'm sometimes not proud of some of the behavior in the game industry. I am happy with the people I work with, and I don't work with people I wouldn't be happy to work with.
Right.
That's more than I can really say, obviously, but
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a responsibility. Like, if my Kickstarter struggles and I don't feel like it's going to work and I'm not going to be able to cover things, you do the responsible thing and you cancel it, and I really hope that doesn't happen. But if, that's what you should do. You shouldn't do these weird shell games and try to plan this future theft, or whatever it is. That's not theft, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep.
And worse, the people who really need Kickstarter need it. And so when you do stuff like this, you undermine a whole methodology of small business owners and creatives being able to fund themselves. And so it's not just a thing, an attack or a crime. I don't know. It's not just terrible for your backers. It's terrible for the hobby and the industry and for creatives to have this outlet and to have the faith in this platform. And that's horrible.
And what I would normally tell people that are getting into Kickstarter is my advice to what to look into at a Kickstarter to examine whether or not the risk is too much for your funding. And first, this is going to show that there's always going to be a risk. And also, this doesn't mean that these companies aren't legally responsible for fulfilling this stuff. Broken Anvil is going to be legally responsible to fulfill it to the best of their ability. But then, of course, bankruptcy is going to happen with companies like
Right.
that. And I don't know
If the
specifically
company
with Broken Anvil,
dissolves.
but yeah, if a
Yeah.
company dissolves, there's nothing to get restitution from.
Yeah.
Um, there's been some cases of like the Kingdoms of Amalur situation where that money was part of the New Jersey government, and so there was some restitutions there that was able to be made. But things get weird. Um, but what I would usually say is, do they have a track record of success? Do they have industry experience and proof that they have the skill set that is going to be required to do this? Like, how professional does the actual Kickstarter itself look? What are they promising to do? Is that within the reasonable amount of budget that the thing is going to cost? Like, if I'm seeing a 3D printer that is going to rival the Elegoo Saturn Ultra on sale for $99, I'm going to be skeptical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like somebody like you, Kristen, with a long history of being able to publish books for ages and ages, I'm going to trust that you're going to be able to publish your next book. But then you look at the situation with Broken Anvil, there were none of those real red flags, even very deep into this process. So, like, it's an
Right.
established company that is obviously got some money being thrown around. They have physical models and prints available. Like, you can see the thing is tangible. They've got a history in the industry of successful projects. They've had successful Kickstarters, albeit digital, beforehand. And
Yeah.
then
And I think that digital transition to physical is
that's
a
a
very key
really,
thing.
yeah, that is one of the things there. Is like, just because you can do something successfully digitally does not mean you can do something successfully physically. And
Yeah.
also, the world of physical production changed a whole lot these last 3 years. So even success of being able to do something physically before pandemic does not
Right.
necessarily mean that you can do things successfully post pandemic.
Well, James here, I think, mentioned the hundreds of dollars for automated litter box, and
Hmm.
that's a great example. It was a great
Hmm.
prototype. That was the video of it, and then it just
Hmm.
never fulfilled, never showed up. And then, of course, it pushed into the pandemic era, and then it was definitely never happening.
I mean, another one that's famous in our field is the D&D documentary. I mean, good grief, that
Yeah,
thing looked successful on all counts, and then broke down. There's just like legal and interpersonal dynamics broke that thing apart to where it's never going to see the light of day.
yeah. I would say this, if you see a Kickstarter that has nothing in their risks section, that's a big red flag.
Yep.
If they don't have at least like boilerplate, publishing is hard. Sometimes weird stuff happens. That is probably
Mhm.
somebody who is overconfident about what their situation is going to look
Mhm.
like.
Yeah.
Because publishing is hard and stuff happens.
Mhm. Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
there's some expectations. Like, there's work up front to proof of stake that needs to be involved here. It's like, do you
Mhm.
have, if you're 3D printing stuff, do you have good looking renders of the core offering? I understand if the stretch goals don't have anything more than sketches,
Sure.
but
Sure.
hey, is that, if it's a book, like, how much of the actual text itself has been written? Like, I understand layout and art need to be done, but that's part of what you're
Right.
getting funding for, is to buy that art. For RPGs, that is almost all of it, right? Is like buying the art and then funding the physical production. Like, the
Sure.
words themselves are often done before the Kickstarter even happened, right?
Yeah, at least in part,
Right.
I would say I've never seen a successful project that didn't have an outline and a substantial amount of text down,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, the pipe dream kind of just, we're going to do this thing. And if they don't have anything there, you're going to have a bad time.
Right. And then time control brings in a very important point. Risks. I might die. Like, the
This happens.
misfortune to creator has absolutely happened
Yeah.
many times. Like, a friend, a dear friend, Owen Casey Stevens, has had a few projects derailed because of personal misfortune,
Hmm.
and that happens.
Actually,
Um,
a mutual dear friend with Owen,
mhm.
Stephen Russell,
Oh
did
yeah.
tragically during
Oh
the
yeah.
Dragons Kickstarter.
Yeah.
that was gut wrenching.
I was working on projects with him when that happened, and it
Yeah,
was
and just such a great guy. He was actually a mentor to me. He got me into publishing and taught me a lot. And he was a fantastic dude. And that, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. So things do happen. There is risk. There's no way to avoid risk, and just be careful. Never put into a Kickstarter any money you can't afford to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bummer notice. Tell me about this Kickstarter that we don't need to be freaked out about, Kristen.
Yeah, well, I mean, for proof of concept, everybody who's involved in it has established TikTok accounts, and so you can go see the fact that they have
What is it, Kristen?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's called the Clockmasters Codex because if you're not familiar with it, TikTok is often called the Clock app. And so I thought it was kind of cute because it was Game Masters and Dungeon Masters, and I've always had a hard time reconciling my handle here. Seventh Mastery is specifically referring to infinite. From some numerology systems refer to 7 as being infinite. So basically, I was trying to create something that encompassed all the types of Dungeon Master, Game Master. Well, all the types of Dungeon Masters and Game Masters on TikTok are all Clock Masters. And so I was like, okay, we'll call it the Clock Masters Codex, and that's everybody that's on that app. And there are a lot. I had no idea when I first started using it. There are so many amazing content creators, and honestly, more than I could put in 10 books, right? So I've got 20 of them, plus a little bit, actually, like 20, I don't know. It's about 24 people, especially when you throw in the editing stuff. The people that are working on that, and we have just a cornucopia of random topics. If you're familiar with basics of the game, doing TTRPGs as art, which I think is a fascinating subject. We've got stuff about, everything from like session zeros to tips on how to role play better, how to integrate terrain. Ryan Imel, I don't know if you've seen his stuff. He's an amazing terrain creator. And gosh, the way he phrased his article title is make something ridiculous you don't need, I think what it's called. And I think that is so cool. How neat, right? There's also stuff geared towards first-time people, how to start. Blue Haired DM, awesome dude over in England, is doing how to start dungeon mastering with almost no money. We have Caro, the RPG mom, doing how to use modules straight out. Caro is like a career trainer and has no time to homebrew, and so she just runs her modules straight off the book and tries to make them as cool as possible. And so it's tips on how to do that, and it's just all the stuff. Hannah is doing this stuff about creating your own planar cosmologies and pantheons. I am finally introducing my player priorities worksheets and stuff that I've been threatening for a long time, which is a whole thing. We could do a whole episode about how much I could geek out about that. But it's just to kind of like totally up level Dungeon Masters and Game Masters as much as possible. And also has custom music by Oz on the Moon Studios, the 3 tracks that are going to be available only to people who back at the resource pack level. And then we do have some stretch goals set up for that to get some more music and to get longer tracks. So it's super custom music. That's going to be neat. And then with Dragon Trappers and Fleshcraft, have thrown in some incredible minis. There is the big Steamwork Train Dragon, Steampunk Train Dragon. There is Iron Golems. So that's kind of for the Clockwork Clockmasters aspect. And then since the campaign is going to fund right before Halloween, we have those werewolves I talked about at the very beginning.
Right. So, yeah. And the Kickstarter's live now.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of really fun backers. You've got that digital tier add-on that gives the cool minis. And you've, since we're on the topic, you've set up your Kickstarter in a way to avoid many of the common pitfalls we just talked about.
Yes. I actually am partnering probably with DriveThruRPG. That's my primary idea. If it like blew up, there's another option. But DriveThruRPG has a partnership with some good scalable print on demand services, and you get like a coupon basically that pays for the book, and all you pay is for the shipping off of DriveThru. And it's a very tried and true thing. I can name dozens of Kickstarters that have used it, and it is very scale proof, which is amazing.
Yeah, like the potential profit goes down on a Kickstarter like that because of how the print on demand works, but at the same time, the risk goes way down.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is not a project to make me rich. This
Right.
is a project to get a whole bunch of creatives into a different space and to connect to communities. Because the thing, like, I do work in games. I talk to people all the time at very big game companies, and every time I'd be like, "Hey, there's this cool thing on TikTok," they were like, "What?"
Mhm.
And it's because there's just so much stuff that like people aren't even seeing. And then the same thing, like there's these people that are creating just tons of content, like people who put out more content for our favorite games than employees who work for them.
Mhm.
And it's insane that they're not actually being acknowledged as part of the community by a whole bunch of the community, but they're like part of that active system. And I think it needs to be connected better. So that's why I'm doing the project.
Yep.
I hope it works.
We'll have links to the project in the show notes. Do encourage you to check it out and see if you would like to back it. I would like to see a nice little happy ending Kickstarter success story that we can come back to after this to kind of wet the palate. And to be fair, most 3D printing Kickstarters in our industry have been very nice. Like, especially since they're all digital. It's like, how many Lovecraft Kickstarters have we shouted out to?
Yeah.
How many other wonderful like Frontiers over there on Tribes?
Rocket Pig's doing one right now. It's $1, and it's an incredible mini, by the way.
Yeah,
you should check it out.
Good Lord, the cast and play fun stuff, the Lost Sword, Dark Elves, like so many really good things. So like, I'm not saying don't do Kickstarter. I'm just saying be a little bit
I'm
careful.
certainly not saying that, please.
Yeah. We just I want to talk about happier things next week, y'all.
Amen.
So until next time, if you want to find more of what we're doing, you can find us over at printergames.com. We're also on all the socials. And until next time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
I'm Kristen Sowers, also known as Seventh Mastery. And don't forget to use your screen protector until you have tempered glass and don't need one.
I'm still going to get one. Don't worry. I don't want to clean that tempered glass and scratch it.
Fair enough.
All right. Bye, y'all.